Hi again, everybody.
Yeah, I think we're back again. X being X, I think I jinxed it when I said it's acting nicely. But yeah, let's get started with the introduction of all our speakers. Maybe we can start with Brennan. Go ahead.
Sure, I'll give it another shot. Hey everyone, I'm Brennan. I'm the CMO of Alio. Alio is a layer one zero knowledge blockchain. We're aiming to build a developer environment that allows for developers to build zero knowledge dApps in a vertically integrated way. So no sacrifice on privacy or scalability in a permissionless way.
Yeah, that sounds pretty exciting. Yeah, over to Kevin from the Monad team.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin, our intern. I work on marketing, eco growth, and venture at Monad. Monad is a high performance EVM compatible layer one, and excited to be here.
Great to have you, Kevin, and congrats on the fundraise announcement. Over
Thank you.
to Matthew from Linera team.
Hi, yeah. So I'm founder at Linera. So Linera is a new kind of decentralized infrastructure that we built on like extreme parallel execution, if you wish, where we give users their own chain of blocks, their own processing capabilities, if you wish, and that's super useful for heavy computations. So we're looking into AI, privacy, and that's super useful also for low latency interactions. Like for instance, gaming, where you would be able to spin games in their new instance, in their new chain of blocks.
Great, Matthew. So I am from the Zeta Chain team. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here. I lead the ecosystem at Zeta Chain. The Zeta Chain is interoperability chain abstraction L1, which basically lets users or projects access native BTC, ETH, and BNB at this point. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Finally, we have Grover from the Say team. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
GM lads. I'm Grover, head of marketing over here at Say. Say is a high performance layer one blockchain focusing on time to finality and throughput. And we're just working on our parallelized EVM v2, which will be rolling out in soon TM.
Awesome. That's like a great set of introductions. We heard so many words, and I think, as you know, expected, the very first question that most of our community members have is exactly how do the different layer ones essentially differ in their, quest to solve various challenges of scalability, security, decentralization, and stuff like that. The very first question is, how does each of these networks essentially solve some of the challenges that Ethereum as an L1 faces with their unique algorithms and protocol design? Go ahead, folks, one by one. If you guys can just go and introduce as to what the tech behind all of that looks like.
I can go ahead and give it a start. Alio is built off of a theoretical paper called Zexy, which imagines what a network can be built on when it has zero knowledge integrated into it from the core all the way down to ZK circuitry and up from there. Alio was built off of that paper of Zexy, so we've been building for 5 years, trying to make this ZK technology work, because we believe that zero knowledge tech is the way that you do add more permissionlessness, privacy, and programmability into the space, all within the name of privacy and scalability. We've built up an entire developer environment, not really on purpose. Like, we would have been an EVM if it would have worked, but in trying to uncover how to build something that satisfies all three of those principles, we realized that we had to build it from the ground up. And so that's what's taken us a long time and what's really challenging about our work, but that's also what sets Alio apart from a lot of other ZK projects and differentiates us from some L1s in the space as well.
Pretty interesting, Brian. I think you should add a link to the paper definitely after the AMA for folks to take a look. Over to other speakers.
Yeah, I can continue. So Linera, so it's a layer one infrastructure, and we chose to design the architecture in like completely new way with something we call microchains. And so we want to execute many parallel chains in one set of validators. So that's how we do it. So we have larger validators able to really provide the same uniform level of security to all the chains, and we like to have lots of parallel chains. I mean, and in particular, every user having their own chain. So that's our approach to scalability.
Interesting. Micro chains. Are there like multiple parallel chains on the EVM, or like how do they work? Yeah.
Sorry, what did you ask? Oh,
I
you're
mean,
asking someone. Sorry.
I think I was just asking, how does these micro chains work essentially, right? Like, are there like just multiple side chains, or like how do they work at a high level?
Yeah. So what's happening is that every what in every chain you can actually configure the way blocks are produced in a different way. And so if I have my chain, it means that I'm actually the permanent block producer in that chain. And so as a user, I'm not going to produce blocks very often. So I'm just going to produce a block if I want to do a transfer of my assets or if I want to interact with other users. And so that makes my own chain kind of lightweight, only, so many blocks, and the blocks are going to be relatively small. And so what's very interesting here is that suddenly you have these lightweight chains in parallel. And since they are lightweight, you can actually replicate them in the wallet. So our wallets contain, we have a real end-to-end security where the wallets of a user are going to rigorously track the on-chain state of the microchains they care about. And even the wallets are able to act as a local data provider as a consequence. So we have this really nice property that Linera is its own data provider using the wallets of the users for that.
Got it. Very interesting. What about other folks? Ryan, Kevin, Grover?
Sure.
Sure. Oh, well, should I take it? I'll take it. Cool. Yeah. Say is just one blockchain, so I guess a little bit different in architecture. This is originally it was a modified version of Tendermint, so that's sort of the proven consensus mechanism using Cosmos. We amplified it, I guess, with a very cool marketing term called Twin Turbo Consensus, which is a couple of things. It's basically changes the way that blocks are propagated and built, which gets you down to this time to finality, which we think is really important, of like 400 milliseconds or less. So this is like one key focus and one really important part of the architecture. Right now, Say supports CosmWasm smart contracts. Like I said, it's just one blockchain, so we think atomic composability is really important. We're sort of in a similar way, I guess, that Monad and Solana are thinking around this kind of problem. So, and yeah, in future, subject to governance, we'll support EVM block contracts as well. So, I mean, yeah, there's a few things to get into, but that's like a super high level overview of how Say looks today.
Yeah, thanks. On Zeta Chain, and we are mainly focusing on our core narratives around Omni-chain, where we are abstracting chains, meaning we can theoretically support or integrate any chain given the encryption scheme. So currently we support Bitcoin, BTC, Ethereum, and BNB. So any asset. So think about a scenario in which a user can have one wallet and interact with any chain or even application, send message across, and as well as trigger smart contracts or any events on the destination chain. So we're kind of in a more abstraction, kind of an aggregating chains category. Yeah, that's where we are. Thank you.
Interesting. Go ahead, Kevin.
At Monad, very much just one monolithic chain. Kind of the key idea is that you can, if you optimize the software, you can get a lot more performance out of the hardware that currently exists. So for example, if you write very efficient code that you can run on Ethereum nodes, you can actually get about 1,000x more performance out of the same hardware just by fundamentally optimizing each piece of the code base. So that's what we've been doing for about 2 years, and should be coming to market shortly with kind of the most performant EVM environment that's been created yet.
And that makes quite a lot of sense, right? Using software to like optimize hardware at the end of the day. Got it. I think gotten a very good introduction of at a high level what the different L1s are, and I know we can jump into the technical aspects and it'll be like a big rabbit hole. But let's just focus on one aspect that again our community, when we showed them the panel, were excited to understand about. And this comes from probably the challenge of interoperating between different layer ones, right? If you are just EVM, it's super easy for you most of the times. But if you're like, for example, me itself, when I was doing a Cosmos to Ethereum transaction, it took me a while to figure out how to do that, and I had some questions on security and stuff like that. So the question that our community kind of posed was, how does this, interoperability with other networks kind of fit in each of these different chains? Say, what are the steps and what are some of the initiatives that you have taken to ensure that interoperability? And maybe we can start with Swayam here, right? I think it's right in your arena to talk about it
Yeah,
first.
exactly. This is the very aligned question that what Zeta Chain is doing. So mainly we use MPC DSS mechanism for interacting with other chains. So think about an account in which you can deposit BTC, and you can also access the same BTC from Zeta Chain and probably do swaps, all kinds of different DeFi applications, and probably use BTC or ETH in your in-game economics. So that's what we basically enable, which is completely abstracting chains. As a user, you would not really find, or there is no need for adding more chains or wallets. So one wallet, and that probably solves for most of it. So right now, what we have currently live is around swaps, so cross-chain swaps. So you can easily swap from BTC to ETH or BTC to BNB. And what would be possible in near future would be interoperability with Cosmos. Like we are Ethermint. So we, if we enable IBC, which we will in later this year, so we'll be able to talk to Cosmos as well. And a good thing, or something that we are waiting to see, something that go live, is smart contracts, where we can actually trigger smart contracts on other chains. So that is also something that would go live later this year. So a complete interoperable network that we are striving for.
Makes sense. What about others in the panel, right? You guys are not necessarily interoperability focused, but how do you guys look at making your chains talk with other chains? Because I think that's a very big friction for a lot of users to join in. Is
I
anyone?
can,
Yeah, go ahead, Brendan. Yeah.
I can,
Go ahead.
yeah. So Aleo isn't immediately interoperable with any other chains. That was done by design to try and preserve a lot of the functionality that we've been focused on around zero knowledge technology. And frankly, we just haven't gotten to that point yet where we're even ready to discuss it. We're trying to build a developer environment that's built for web applications broadly and trying to integrate privacy into those that scales. So it's not necessarily that we don't believe in interoperability. It's definitely something that we expect to come down the line, and there are a lot of projects in our ecosystem that are trying to think about that user experience. But our primary goal to start is building a developer environment where people can build ZK applications that impact the world broadly. Partners like Stripe or Mastercard, or even elements of identity that goes much further than just a Web3 use case, are the things we're trying to prepare for right now.
Yeah, I think it seems like a B2B facing angle, and that's quite interesting. Makes sense. What about others? Like, how far are you from your journey of interoperability, and how do you guys look at that?
Yeah, I can say a word about Minera. So the way we think about it is we chose to use the Rust SDK for now, but it's based on the Wasm VM, we kind of like we kind of like the WASM VM. It's actually supporting several languages, so gives us a lot of room for experimentation and with now with everybody's looking into AI and there are there are some libraries that are readily available in Rust, for instance, and in other languages. Maybe we'll even look into Python at some point. So we're very happy to support that almost for free through WASM. Also, we have the freedom to look at supporting Solidity in the future. That's something that obviously there's a lot of demand for, and so that's something we might also do. So I think for us, what was important in the initial design was the flexibility, really, to and then innovate first, and then the flexibility to interoperate with other systems.
Makes sense. Kevin, Grover, any last thoughts before we get into the next set of questions?
Yeah, I guess it's not directly answering interoperability, right? Like we'll have the same interoperability that Ethereum has with like complete feature parity. But I would say kind of the more of the unlock is like there are a lot of teams that choose a performant chain to build their application because it's necessary. And there's just not a solution to build those types of apps on the EVM right now. There's just not an environment that's scalable enough. So we're almost bringing that type of, it's not interoperability per se, but it's more creating a new design space for the EVM, right? Which has like 95% of devs, users, TVL, et cetera. So trying to open the EVM ecosystem's eyes to what's possible with scalability, and then hopefully more interoperability blossoms from there.
Very interesting. I think basically focusing on certain set of verticals or certain sorts of new applications that today may not necessarily be super optimal in the EVM design space. Makes sense. Grover, any last comments on this about say?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, a lot of this is looking at the current landscape of existing blockchains that run on the EVM. It's pretty much exactly what Kevin says. Like 9 out of 10 devs are building on EVM, at least one EVM chain. This is where the mind share is. This is where most of the work has been done. So, like, what's the clearest unlock for these guys? It's okay. We'll build a more scalable blockchain that runs on the EVM and also unlocks all these new potentials using modern hardware. I mean, that's pretty much the thesis of every single high performance layer one that's launching right now. So I think, well, not every single one, right? But I think that's a pretty clear unlock from my perspective. The other thing that comes to mind talking about interop is things like, I always think about bridging. I mean, obviously, Say will support all the popular bridges, canonical tokens that make sense. Trying to reduce the amount of fragmentation that you get between different random flavors of USDC and things like that, which is a pain in the backside. Like as a user, I detest bridging, and I think hopefully we're not too far away from a place where people don't have to like navigate to bridges and figure out like what the trust assumptions and risks are, right? Like that's just a pain. Everybody on this panel probably agrees with that point.
Makes sense. I think a lot of L1s not necessarily focusing on interoperability, but building their own vertical use cases, and we will figure out interoperability sometime later is what I'm taking away from the conversation. Got it. Makes sense. Okay, let's move to the next question, right? And this question is probably the most important question that our community wants an answer to. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure we first get the tech and the basics together before we get into that, right? So this question is again a growth question because it's a growth podcast. So unfortunately, I have to ask this one. What is the role of point system in growing the different L1s that we right now have on the panel, right? The whole community points angle that has come up, that has popped up quite a lot. And very curious to understand if you guys are also building it. If so, then what is one of the best practices you are incorporating? And if you're not building it, then what's the thought process behind the same as well? Over to you guys.
I have to bounce here at the half hour, so I just want to jump in and just talk about points real quick for us.
Yeah.
At Aleo, we're using points as an element of our ambassador program. It's a way for us to encourage people to be high quality contributors to the Aleo ecosystem, and they've really created a lot of opportunities for people to get involved with a lot of different programs across our ecosystem. We're not using points in the more traditional sense, where broadly it's available to everyone. We have a pretty rigorous application process. However, we do have ambassadors that are over a couple hundred different ambassadors who are participating in the ecosystem at a high level. It's interesting to see points take off as a way to subvert a token. I think it's a great way for people to gauge activity and leverage all of the awesome people who are ready to contribute to these different ecosystems. But at the moment, that's how we're doing it with Aleo.
Oh, I didn't know about that, Brennan. Interesting, very interesting. And thanks for joining in. Hope to have you again on some other panel. Take care. Yeah, over to other folks, right? How are you guys building your point system? What are the best practices? Would love to hear from you. Go ahead, Sven.
Yeah. Uh, on our end, we have something called Zeta Hub, where we are aggregating or collecting activities or different tasks from games or any DeFi applications and plugging it into the hub. So one thing that we have seen work quite well is the user retention, as well as new interest from the users, in a very structured manner for users to explore the ecosystem. So that has given us more freedom on to even check new functionality that we add to the hub and see how the users are reacting to it, and if they are interacting with the system, and if it goes through some bugs or anything, we can find it out and see where actually the problem is arising. So it's a really good process to uh, have give a structured approach to users to explore the chain, and as well as what we get is a real good feedback and a very specific feedback that what we are looking for. Along with that, we are also seeing more like there are a few tasks in which we also saw more bot activities that were coming in. So it has been a bit challenging on that front, but we are still trying to make it better and see how we can actually tap into the unique, proper, genuine users, and that's what we are building for. And right now, like we are hitting almost 300K unique wallets every week, which is something growing every month on month. So that has been a good user retention in a way, and onboarding.
Very interesting, Sven. Great. Over to Monad team, Say team, Dinera. Go ahead.
Mixed. I got a mixed take on points. I think it's kind of taking people. It's all part of this attention economy sort of thing going on, right? I think like how do you sort of, but for the record, Say has not got any points going on, so just getting that out there. But it's kind of part of this attention economy. Like, how do you sort of keep your project in people's minds for as long as possible? I think it's a super interesting, like you've seen this blow up a few times pretty badly for people sort of setting expectations which just can't be met. It's a pretty bad call. Some projects have done it extremely well. I know it's pretty controversial, but I think the Blast launch last year was pretty interesting. I think the way that they've sort of attacked it is pretty much the purest sort of way of saying, yeah, points are a way of getting people to pay attention to your project, and this is how we're going to do it, very much on the nose, right? So yeah, I think it's kind of like a weird derivative of the attention economy that's just like a natural part of crypto right now. So yeah, not like pro or against, just I guess an observer of it.
Yeah, I would say there's kind of like three levels, and point systems sit at level 2. So like the worst case scenario is no one knows about you and no one's doing anything, right? That's like, how do you know if your marketing team stinks? It's like if no one knows who you are. Um, I think that no point system and no one knowing who you are is the worst place to be. If you have no other option, point systems are a way to kind of generate attention and activity. It's very mercenary, right? It's like, oh, it's like Skinner's pigeon, right? It's like if I click this button, then I'm gonna get X reward. So like people will respond to incentives, but it's not sticky at all, right? It's like obviously they're doing it for the points. Like that's why you created the points in the first place, is to get people to do the action. So that's better than having nothing. And then I think the place where you want to be is that all of the actions are being done organically, right out of interest without any type of point system. So if you can get to that, right, that's the highest level of like having strong community, strong user base. Like that's kind of where you want to get to. Points is a little bit of a shortcut to get there, right? It can throw some fuel on the fire, but you are making the trade, right? It's like you are trading, you're basically trading these points, right? Or like the organic use that you would get for a larger number of people that are just trying to Sybil or farm. So it's like a way to kind of farm farmers, which has its place, but it's not like the end all be all, right? It's kind of a tool that you can use to get a desired action.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with everything that was said. I mean, there are definitely ways to misuse that kind of tools and to basically turn them into something that is metrics that are meaningless. But I also wanted to I mean say in general, I think what's amazing with blockchain is and Web3 is just that those tools exist and there are ways to reach out even for early projects, ways to reach out to communities and build those experiences and interact and overcome what would otherwise be a very negative network effect, right? So this is the what really makes innovation so exciting, I think, in the field is that you can always try to create a new network, and you got all those tools at your disposal to do so.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think kind of fair critique of the point system, it can really be misused quite a lot, and that's why, at least what we have seen some of our other D applications working with us do is design them very carefully. For example, making sure points are on chain. I think that was discussed in the last panel talk as well by I think CKSing team, and then I think there was also this entire concept of who do you really give the points to and what are the actions. I need to make the actions quite recurring. So in fact, just one conversation I was having earlier in the day, right? We saw some point system where people were basically awarded for answering a quiz, but then I also saw influencers just giving the answers to the quiz in their thread, and that led to the whole point of the point system actually being defeated. And hence, a lot of thinking and innovation has to be done there in terms of how do you really make sure the actions are recurring, the actions are meaningful, and probably points are an afterthought, as I think Kevin was talking about as well. Makes sense. Very interesting. Got it. I think we'll talk a bit more about points towards the end of the conversation, a couple of quick fires. But before that, let's move to the next question. And this question, particularly, it's an interesting one because we did ask it the last time as well in the panel, which was about how do you get developer attention to the different L2s that are building on EVM. So, similar question here, right? As to this is a totally new L1 ecosystem that all of you guys are building, and we agree maximum mindshare is on EVM. So what are some of the tactics and strategies that you guys are building out right now to onboard more developers to your different layer ones? And this will be super interesting for, by the way, some app developer founders who I see have joined our space. So it would be super exciting to hear from you guys in that as to what they should expect from you guys. Over to you.
Yeah, I think I can go. For developers, I think what has really worked well for us we are live from last couple of months on mainnet. So what is working really well for Zeta Chain is the liquidity that we're unlocking on BTC end. So that becomes very interesting for a lot of projects to explore and provide BTC or native BTC as a part of their integration in the applications. It could be DeFi, gaming, anything. And on top of that, there are two things like Ethereum, the entire Ethereum ecosystem, and the all the altos are fighting for the same market share or the same liquidity and the same network effects. What we are trying to do is to aggregate and bring network effects of EVM side to BTC and BTC liquidity to the where the network effects are, and that probably makes us at the center where it's more interesting for developers to tap into the value and see how they can actually unlock more potential that is actually available. Uh, and yeah, that's something on the onboarding the devs.
Yeah, very interesting value prop. Liquidity of BTC. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Over to others. What are your some secret tricks and strategies, or your pitch to developers basically to try you guys out? Kevin, Grover, Matthew, can you hear me? Please go ahead.
Sure, yeah. I guess a few things. So Say went to mainnet back in August of last year, and so we've had various different approaches and ideas about what's going to be the best way to work with developers and applications. The clearest thing is that at all times, every single layer one is competing to sort of be the best place for any one team, one application to launch. And there is for sure, in fact, I'd actually argue that there are more layer one teams than like super strong app teams in the market at any one time, maybe including layer twos and layer ones together. So you have to sort of have a clear idea of what you're pitching these guys. You have to understand what's going to be the right move for their app. Sometimes that's not even deploying on your blockchain. It might be they want to go and build their own application specific chain. Sometimes they want to spin off and kind of saw that with the Nitro team. They want to build something like a layer 2 on, say, and this is all like there's a variety of different options for people who want to build stuff. I think the most important thing is just understanding what people are doing on your blockchain right now. So for Say, we're looking at this, and the majority of people, most of the activity, the organic activity going on in Say is NFTs. So it's like, cool. How do we double down on that from the foundation side? Which is why we rolled out this creators fund pretty recently last week. So if you want to check that out, and if you've got ideas, if you want to build something on, say, around NFTs, NFT infra, SocialFi, all of this stuff, just take a look at that. And there's a process, an application process there to get involved. So that's one thing. One thing you can do is pitch your creator fund on a Twitter space to attract developers to your blockchain.
Very cool. I think focus on a certain type of apps that probably are already seeing some very good organic activity. Makes sense. What about you, Kevin? I think you're in the testnet phase. How are you guys looking at it?
Yeah, I think that it's just been like an overwhelming amount of inbound, which is good. It didn't used to be that way. So I think just like making sure everyone knows what you're building and why it's important. And then like when you talk about tech, it may go over a lot of like retail's head, but people who actually know what you're talking about, right? Like those are the smart devs that you want to build there. So I think just like allowing the brand and what Monad is to increase organically has just led to a very large amount of inbound from like super smart devs that they kind of see the potential for what Monad is going to unlock, and they just want to be a part of it, right? They're like, I think this is high potential. I see this new app that I can build that was previously impossible. And so that's been a lot of it. Like I wish that there was kind of more like tips or secrets to share on that side. But I think just making sure that like smart people know what you're doing is like that's really the key or the active ingredient, at least from what I've seen.
I think you hit a quite fundamental tenet of just making sure the right folks know what your value prop is. Heard something similar from Jay from the Avalanche team, I think a couple of years ago when we were hosting him for a space. So that makes sense. You gotta still have your foundations in place. What about you, Matthew from the Lindner team?
Yeah, so for us, we obviously a bit earlier than others in this field. We have a DevNet, and we're still building big parts of the system. But for us, yeah, it's really about the use cases, like really creating this, making these new applications possible. That would be really hard to do on other systems. So if you want to create an experience, on-chain experience for users where they have like low latency interactions. That's something that would be able to do, and with end-to-end security, and that's really hard to do in general when you have to go through the hoops of a mempool and a data and indexing solution and data provider. So and that's the kind of things that we are just like really solving within our other parts that another value proposition we're making is also being able to support this super heavy computation that are really hard to do in a traditional monolithic chain, because just the block time would be horrendous if you allow people to send transactions that take a minute. It would be horrendous for everybody. As opposed to in linear, where we with the microchain system, if I have my own chain and I send a transaction that takes a minute, it will basically make my chain think for a minute, but everybody else in the system is fine, and they can work as usual and enjoy nominal service level agreements. So we're really looking at taking innovation into the hands of our developers to empower them. And then other than that, I think everything that has been said is true. I mean, just we're doing all the things, yeah.
Got it. Sorry for digressing, right? But I think there's just one question that popped in my head. It's not something that at least the community thought about. And I wanted you guys take on that, because it's related to developer onboarding only. So as you saw with Blast, right? They kind of gave Blast points to even developers to like build apps on them, and then there's like a Blast Gold concept as well. So kind of similar to point system, but for developers, right? What are your early thoughts on that? Do you think that kind of maybe makes more sense because you're not necessarily attracting the retail speculators, but attracting developer activity through some incentivized loyalty program?